In Lagos's wealthiest estate, a young security guard believes he owns the gate. His tongue cuts sharper than knives, his arrogance stretches further than the walls he protects. But power built on pride is always one mistake away from collapse. When a frail old taxi driver rolls up in a dusty Corolla, Emmanuel sees only weakness to mock. What he doesn't know is that behind the wrinkles lies a truth that will tear his kingdom apart. The cameras are watching, the tenants are whispering, and destiny is already closing in. What happens when the man you humiliate is the one person you can never afford to cross? Welcome to the Judge Stories. If you enjoy powerful tales with twists that leave you thinking, please hit subscribe to help us grow. And in the comments, let us know which country you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. The afternoon sun blazed over Lekki, its golden heat bouncing off polished glass balconies and marble walls. At the entrance to Eden Heights Estate, Emmanuel reigned from his post like a self-crowned king. His uniform was pressed sharp, but the top buttons hung open to flaunt a glinting chain. Dark shades covered his eyes, yet his smirk was plain for all to see. A black Mercedes slowed before the gate. The driver rolled down the window to present his access card, but Emmanuel waved lazily. "Move that car back, Oga. You're blocking my view." His tone dripped with command, not courtesy. The man frowned but obeyed. Emmanuel's lips curved in triumph. He loved the feeling, rich men bowing, not because of respect but because of fear of inconvenience. He leaned against the booth, spinning his keyring idly. Across the street, a tenant's wife in flowing ankara hurried past. Emmanuel let his voice carry, low and deliberate. "Madam, fine like you dey waste here? You know sabi say I dey watch?" Her steps quickened, head bowed. But Emmanuel chuckled. Most of them returned. He always knew how to make them return. His phone buzzed, lighting up with a missed call from Mama Ogun. He glanced at the screen, rolled his eyes, and silenced it. The voice that once prayed over him was easy to ignore beneath the hum of prestige and power at the gate. By evening, his newest fling appeared, gum snapping between her teeth, braids bouncing with each careless step. She perched on the booth like it was her personal throne. Emmanuel puffed his chest, enjoying the stares from passing tenants. It wasn't just security he provided, it was a show, and he was the star. Behind tinted glass in one SUV, a resident muttered to his wife, "This boy is a scandal waiting to happen." She nodded. Pride will kill him. Their whispers were not alone. Complaints had been building quietly, passed to the estate office, typed neatly into reports by Cynthia, Mr. Ade's sharp-eyed secretary. But Emmanuel didn't care. In his mind, the gate was his domain. The tenants feared his tongue. Women admired his swagger, and his bosses, well, they hadn't touched him yet. That meant he was untouchable. What Emmanuel didn't see was the camera's tiny red light above the booth, recording every smirk, every insult, every whisper. And in a cool office upstairs, Cynthia filed another report, her pen scratching like a judge's gavel. At the gate, Emmanuel adjusted his shades and laughed with his girlfriend. He thought he was in control. But destiny had already drawn its circle, and he stood proudly at the center, unaware of the storm about to fall. The estate office carried the hush of wealth, polished floors, leather chairs, and the faint scent of imported air freshener. Yet beneath its calm, tension brewed. A neat stack of folders out on the mahogany desk, and on top lay a thin file marked Complaints, Security Post. Cynthia adjusted her glasses, flipping open the folder. Her long hair was tied into a sleek ponytail, her blouse crisp against the curve of her navy pencil skirt. She read each page carefully, her neat handwriting framing words. Tenant alleges verbal insult. Tenant reports harassment at the gate. Tenant's wife uncomfortable passing alone. The list grew like a trail of smoke from a hidden fire. The door opened quietly. Mr. Jude Ade stepped in, his presence filling the room before he spoke. At 62, his shoulders carried the dignity of decades. Today, he wore a cream-colored senator wear, trimmed with subtle gold embroidery, slippers soft against the tiles. His eyes, sharp but calm, landed on the file Cynthia slid across to him. He leafed through slowly. "So many?" "Yes, sir." Cynthia's voice was steady, though her chest tightened. "And more keep coming. Some tenants hinted they may relocate. if this continues. His behavior is damaging the estate's reputation. Mr. Ade set the file down, steepling his fingers. And you personally? Her jaw tightened. She remembered the heat of Emmanuel's cologne when he once leaned too close in the staff car park, the way his words curled like smoke. She had felt anger coil in her stomach then, but she'd swallowed it because she feared false accusations. Now, reading the tenant's complaints, she felt vindicated. He approached me once, she admitted quietly. I dismissed him, but he carries himself as if no law applies to him. For a long moment, silence held the room. Outside, the hum of generators blended with the distant roar of Lagos traffic. Inside, judgment ripened. Should I dismiss him? Cynthia asked, her pen poised. She knew from his file that Emmanuel came from a poor background. His mother was listed as a trader from Ogun State. It only made his arrogance feel more bitter. No. Mr. Ade's reply was calm, deliberate. Not yet. Arrogance exposes itself when you give it rope. Let the cameras keep watch. I prefer proof over rumor. Cynthia nodded, though her eyes hardened. Emmanuel thought he was untouchable, but the estate was not blind. Every smirk, every insult, every careless gesture was being captured. At the gate below, Emmanuel leaned back in his chair laughing with his girlfriend. To him, the estate was a playground. To Cynthia and Mr. Ade, it was now a stage, and the curtain was about to rise. Evening sky burned orange as an old 2004 Toyota Corolla rattled past crowded Danfos and restless Okadas. Behind the wheel sat a frail man whose gray hair curled under a faded driver's cap. His shirt, checkered and frayed at the cuffs, hung loosely over thin shoulders. His hands, though wrinkled, gripped the wheel with calm steadiness. This was Papa Ade, father of billionaire Jude Ade. Where others his age sought comfort in recliners and attendants, he clung to simplicity. Driving was his exercise, his pastime, his way of touching life beyond the marble gates of his son's estate. Better to move my body than let age bury it, he would say. He had long taught his son that wealth without humility was dangerous. To test whether his lessons were being followed, he sometimes arrived unannounced, blending in with ordinary Lagos drivers. As he weaved through Oshodi traffic, a young passenger tried to press a full fare into his palm. Papa Ade smiled and waved it back. Keep it, my son. I only drive to keep these bones awake. The boy shook his head, baffled at the old man's stubborn humility. By the time the Corolla turned into the serene Lekki Road, dusk had begun to settle. Papa Ade's heart warmed at the sight of the estate walls, their polished gates glowing under mounted lamps. He had not told Jude he was coming. He wanted to surprise him. To arrive as any ordinary visitor, not as a billionaire's father. His last visit, he'd told his son, "Don't spoil your staff, let them treat strangers with kindness." Now he would see if those words were heeded. At the gate, Emmanuel stood like a peacock, uniform shirt unbuttoned at the chest, sunglasses dangling even in the fading light. His girlfriend leaned casually against the booth, snapping gum between her teeth. When the dusty Corolla approached, Emmanuel tilted his chin, smirking. "Now who'd they drive this rickety car come block my gate?" he muttered loud enough for his girlfriend to giggle. Papa Ade rolled down the window, his voice soft but firm. "Good evening, my son. I'm here to see Jude. I'm his father." Emmanuel threw back his head in laughter. "You? Mr. Ade's father? Baba, I beg no use joke kill me. If not so, I be the President of America." The old man's eyes held patience, but also disappointment. "I'm not lying. Open the gate and you will know." Emmanuel tapped the car's hood, sneer curling. "Baba, respect yourself. Park come out from here before I vex." Behind him, cars lined up, their drivers watching. Emmanuel puffed out his chest, relishing the spectacle. The old man sighed, gripping the wheel. Destiny had brought him here, but arrogance blocked the way. The line of cars behind the old Corolla snaked along the street. Voices rose from open windows, impatience building, but Emmanuel stood like a rock at the entrance, arms folded, sunglasses sliding lower on his nose. The fading sun caught the chain at his neck, making him look more like a boastful playboy than a guard. "Baba, Abeg stop this comedy," he barked. "Mr. Ade way run this estate go send driver, not some ancient Corolla way fit, die for road. Tell another lie." His girlfriend burst into laughter, slapping her thigh as though Emmanuel's words were a stage performance. Papa Ade's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. His voice, though calm, carried an edge. I did not come here to argue. I am Jude's father. If you value your work, young man, open this gate. The tenants behind leaned out of their windows, watching. One muttered, "Is this guard mad? That man looks old enough to be anyone's father." Another shook his head. "Emmanuel, no day fear anybody. One day he will see." But Emmanuel only felt the thrill of an audience. His arrogance swelled like a drumbeat. He leaned close to the car window, smirk deepening. "Baba, you day craze? Because you get gray hair you think say you fit talk anyhow? If you no leave, I go drag you out myself." Gasps rippled among the tenants. Emmanuel's girlfriend giggled louder, snapping her gum, delighted at the spectacle. To her it was entertainment. To Emmanuel, it was proof that he was untouchable. Papa Ade's eyes softened with sorrow, the wisdom of his 80 years heavy in his voice. "Young man, pride is a curse. Do not let it destroy you." But Emmanuel heard only defiance. He slapped the booth with his palm, chest puffed high. "Keep your proverb, old man. This Naleki, not your village square. I run this gate. I decide who enters and who no enter." Phones raised, lips whispered. The tense scene was recorded by both tenants and the estate's silent cameras. Papa Ade sighed, his face etched with quiet disappointment. He had come to visit his son, but instead found pride standing like a gatekeeper. And Emmanuel, drunk on false power, thought he had won. The storm, however, was only beginning. The air at the estate gate grew thick, the blare of horns pressing against the fading light. Drivers leaned out of windows, their voices raised in protest, but Emmanuel relished the stage. His uniform hung half open, his girlfriend's laughter ringing like applause. He was the star, and the old man before him was nothing but a prop. "Baba, Abeg disappear," Emmanuel barked, slamming the hood of the Corolla. "You no get shame? See as you day block big men with your jalopy." Papa Ade's eyes, calm yet weary, met his. "I came to see my son, Jude Ade. I told you the truth. One day you will regret this pride." The words landed like a warning, but Emmanuel only heard mockery. His lips curled into a sneer. "Regret? Me? You know Sabby who I be for here?" His girlfriend clapped, her voice rising above the crowd. "Give him better disgrace, Emmanuel. Show him say nah you be Oga for this gate." And Emmanuel, intoxicated by her approval and the murmurs of tenants behind, let his temper spill. He leaned down, hissed, "You no fit command me," and then struck. The slap cracked through the compound like thunder. The old man's head tilted with the blow, his cap tumbling into his lap. For a moment, silence held the gate still. Tenants froze, mouths open. Even the horns stopped. Emmanuel's hand lingered in the air, his chest rising with pride. "Next time you go know your level," he boasted, stepping back. His girlfriend whistled, clapping in delight. But Papa Ade did not retaliate. He straightened slowly, replacing the cap on his head with trembling fingers. His cheek burned red, yet his dignity remained untouched. He looked at Emmanuel for a long moment, sorrow deeper than anger in his gaze. Then, without another word, he turned the key and drove off, the Corolla rattling into the dusk. Murmurs rippled among the tenants. "Did he just slap that old man?" one whispered. Another shook his head, eyes wide. "God will judge him, mark my words." Emmanuel dusted his palms theatrically, laughing as though he had achieved victory. "See how I handle nonsense," he boasted, soaking in the horrified stares as if they were applause. Above the booth, the tiny red light of the CCTV camera blinked steadily. It had captured every insult, every laugh, and the slap that would soon shatter his world. The estate's conference room was chilled by the steady hum of the air conditioner, its widescreen glowing against polished wood panels. Emmanuel sat stiffly in a leather chair, cap clutched in his hands, sweat glistening along his hairline. His once cocky smile had thinned into a nervous twitch. Cynthia stood beside the controls, her navy suit sharp, hair pinned into a bun. She kept her gaze on the file in her hands, though her voice was firm when she spoke. "This is not rumor, Mr. Ade. The footage tells everything." She allowed herself a small exhale. After months of filing complaints, the truth would finally be clear. At the head of the room sat Jude Ade, regal in a dark agbada embroidered with gold thread. His face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of judgment. "Play it," he said quietly. The screen flickered alive. There was Emmanuel, sneering at the old man. The laughter of his girlfriend echoed faintly through the speakers. And then, the slap. The sound reverberated even louder in the silent room than it had at the gate. A ripple of shock passed through the small group of tenants and senior staff gathered to witness. Emmanuel shot up from his seat. "It's not what it looks like, sir. The man provoked me. He insulted me first. I was only defending—" Cynthia's glare sliced his excuses in half. "Defending yourself from what? From an old man asking to see his son?" She thought briefly of his file. The line noting his mother's prayers. How could a man with such a background become this? Emmanuel stammered, his mouth opening and closing. I didn't know who he was." At that moment, the door opened. Two attendants stepped in, guiding the same old man from the footage. But this time he wore a spotless white caftan. A carved cane steadied his steps. His frame was still lean, his back straighter now in dignity. His eyes, calm yet piercing, surveyed the room. Emmanuel's breath caught. He gripped the back of his chair, color draining from his face. Mr. Ade rose to his feet, his voice clear and deliberate. "This is my father. The man you mocked. The man you struck." Whispers erupted around the room. Cynthia's lips pressed into a thin line, satisfaction flickering in her eyes. Emmanuel fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "Sir, Papa, please, I didn't know. Forgive me." Papa Ade said nothing. He only looked at Emmanuel, disappointment heavy in his silence. In that silence, Emmanuel realized the truth. Ignorance would not save him. The living room of Jude Ade's mansion glowed beneath chandeliers, the marble floor reflecting every flicker of light. Tonight, it felt less like a home and more like a courtroom. Tenants lined the sides, whispering behind manicured fingers, eager to witness the downfall of the guard who had tormented them. Emmanuel knelt in the center, his uniform rumpled, his cap discarded on the floor. The swagger that once made him feared was gone. In its place, a trembling man fought to steady his breath. Sweat streamed down his temples as he bowed his head low. Cynthia stood near the window, her charcoal suit pressed sharp, arms folded over her chest. She had typed complaints for months, yet none carried the weight of what the cameras revealed. Now she needed no words. Emmanuel's disgrace had become its own testimony. Jude Ade sat on a carved armchair at the head of the room, clad in a flowing black agbada stitched with golden thread. His presence radiated calm authority. Beside him, Papa Ade rested on his cane, his gray senator wear glowing soft under the lights. Together, they embodied justice, one stern, the other wise. "Emmanuel," Mr. Ade's voice rolled like thunder, steady but cold. "You were placed at this gate to protect, not to pray. Instead, you mocked tenants, seduced wives, and now you struck an old man." Emmanuel's voice cracked as he lifted his hands in desperate plea. "Sir, I beg you, I didn't know." "If I had known it was your father," Cynthia cut in, her tone sharp. "If he had been truly poor, you would have trampled him as you've done to others. Respect means nothing to you unless tied to power." Murmurs of agreement rose from the tenants. A man whispered, "Finally, he's finished." Papa Ade raised his hand gently, his voice calm but piercing. "Young man, I have lived long enough to see men rise and fall. Poverty does not destroy as quickly as pride. Today, you stand broken. Not because of lack, but because you mocked humility." Emmanuel's sobs echoed in the room. "Please, Papa, forgive me. I have only my mother in the village. She prays for me daily. I have failed her." A flicker of his village flashed in his mind. The clay walls, the smell of firewood, his mother's call he had ignored. Mr. Ade's eyes hardened. "We gave you rope, and you used it to hang yourself. Tonight, judgment will be carried out." The room stilled, the weight of his words pressing down like a verdict no plea could overturn. Morning settled over Eden Heights with an unusual hush. Tenants peered from balconies, some clutching mugs of steaming coffee, others holding up phones, ready to record. News had spread. The guard who ruled the gate with swagger was finally being cast out. Emmanuel stood outside the mansion, stripped of authority. Gone was the polished uniform. In its place clung a faded t-shirt and dusty jeans. His shoulders slumped, his face pale, eyes darting like a hunted animal. The swagger that once commanded attention was replaced by trembling knees. Two junior guards escorted him forward. Every step across the manicured compound felt heavier than the last. His girlfriend, who once leaned proudly at the gate, was nowhere to be found. In her place were the eyes of tenants who had endured his insults. Their stares cut sharper than knives. Cynthia watched from the office balcony, a soft pastel blouse draping her shoulders. Her arms folded, lips pressed tight. She felt no triumph, only the weight of justice. She remembered when Emmanuel had dared to call himself King of the Gate. Now the so-called king shuffled like a prisoner through his own domain. At the mansion entrance, Jude 8 addressed the gathered crowd. His cream agbada flowed in the morning light, his tone measured but firm. For years complaints came. For years warnings were ignored. This young man chose arrogance over humility, disgrace over honor. Today his time ends. Gasps and murmurs rippled. A tenant muttered to his wife, "Yesterday he insulted me. Today, look at him." She nodded. Pride never lasts. Emmanuel collapsed to his knees, dust rising around him. His voice cracked. "Sir, please, not before everyone. I beg you, spare me this shame." Papa Aide, standing quietly with his cane, shook his head. His voice, though soft, carried across the compound. "This shame is the cure, my son. You must taste the fruit of pride to know its poison." The guards pulled Emmanuel back to his feet. He stumbled, dragging his feet toward the gate. Phones clicked, whispers followed. By the time he reached the towering iron bars, the symbol of his false kingdom, his head hung so low the chain around his neck swung like a mockery. The gate opened, not to let him reign, but to cast him out. Beyond it, Lagos sprawled with dust and noise, ready to swallow him whole. Emmanuel stepped through, a fallen man with nothing left but the echo of his disgrace. The bus to Ogun State groaned along the highway, its cracked windows rattling with every bump. Emmanuel sat hunched in the back row, dust clinging to his faded jeans and t-shirt. The once proud guard of Eden Heights was now just another weary passenger, pressed between strangers who didn't know his name, or worse, those who did. Two men in the front whispered over a folded newspaper. One jabbed his finger at a small headline. "Security guard dismissed after assaulting old man at Lekki Estate." They laughed, shaking their heads. Imagine slapping a grandfather like that. Lagos no day forgive. Emmanuel shifted uncomfortably, pulling his cap low. They didn't realize the disgraced guard sat only a few seats away. The road stretched endlessly, lined with palm trees and rusted signboards. Emmanuel stared out the window, watching the blur of villages and bush paths. Each passing mile peeled away another layer of pride. He remembered the Mercedes he once ordered around, the wives he flirted with, the laughter he basked in at the gate. Now all that power seemed like smoke, dissolved by one reckless slap. He thought of his mother's missed call, the one he'd dismissed with a smirk. Her voice echoed in his mind now. "Emmanuel, remember where you come from." He had laughed at her simplicity when he first arrived in Lagos, promising her he would send money and never return poor. How hollow his promises sounded now. A child across the aisle watched him curiously, pointing at his dusty shoes. Emmanuel looked down at them, once polished to perfection, now scuffed and worn. He swallowed hard, a lump rising in his throat. As the bus rolled into a small town for fuel, vendors rushed forward with roasted corn and sachet water. Emmanuel reached for his pocket only to find the last of his crumpled notes, barely enough for the fare. Hunger twisted his stomach, but he stayed silent. The swagger that once demanded attention had shriveled into quiet invisibility. Night fell as the bus neared Ogun. The passengers dozed, their heads lolling with each jolt of the road. Emmanuel remained awake, his thoughts heavy. He saw his mother's face in his mind, bent in prayer inside their mud hut. He imagined her hands, rough from farm work, lifting him as a child. He had spurned her wisdom, he had laughed at her faith. Now, her words rang truer than ever. When the bus finally slowed at the village stop, Emmanuel stepped down into the dust. The air smelled of firewood and earth. Children chased one another barefoot, their laughter echoing in the dark. For the first time in years, Emmanuel felt small. Not the feared guard of a wealthy estate, but a broken son walking toward home. The village was quiet, under the pale glow of the moon. Emmanuel walked slowly through the narrow path that led to his mother's hut, his dusty shoes scuffing the earth. Each step echoed with memories. The boy who once fetched water from the stream, the youth who once swore he would never be poor again. Now, after all his pride, he returned with nothing but shame on his shoulders. Inside the mud hut, a kerosene lamp flickered weakly against cracked walls. His mother knelt on a raffia mat, wrapper tied tightly around her waist, her lips moving in steady prayer. Her Bible lay open before her. She whispered, "Lord, keep my son." "Mama!" The word caught in Emmanuel's throat. She turned, her eyes wide. For a moment she froze, then tears streamed down her cheeks. She rose quickly, her bare feet padding across the mat. "Emmanuel, my son." She cupped his face, studying the dust and fatigue etched into his features. Emmanuel dropped to his knees, his head pressed into her lap. "Mama, forgive me. I forgot who I was. I forgot where I came from. I disgraced myself. And you." His voice broke into sobs. She stroked his hair gently, rocking him like a child. "You are my son. I never stopped praying. God does not despise a broken heart." Emmanuel lifted his head, his eyes red. "They cast me out, Mama. Mr. Aide, his father, everyone saw my shame. I am finished." "No." Her voice was soft but firm. "Better shame in front of men than destruction before God. This is mercy, Emmanuel. Humility has found you." Her words echoed the wisdom spoken to him at the mansion, connecting the two ends of his journey. Outside, crickets chirped, and the night breeze rustled palm fronds. Emmanuel looked around the small hut, the cracked walls, the threadbare mat, the faint smell of firewood. This was where his story began, not the marble gates of Eden Heights, but here, in simplicity and prayer. He bowed his head again. "Mama, I will rise, but not with pride. This time, I will rise with humility." His mother placed her hands on his head, whispering a blessing through her tears. "Then you are already on your way, my son." And in the quiet of that night, Emmanuel felt peace for the first time in years, not in power, not in swagger, but in the grace of starting over.